Hi, I'm Anna. Welcome to Art Club for May. A little bit later off the press than usual because we've been doing an exhibition over in Lyme Regis and I have been rushed off my feet. However, I've just made some time in the studio this morning to make a little video, and this month's topic, this month's mini project is what's in the bag, and that is going to end up with a picture. This is my picture for the month, and I will explain all as we go along. What you're going to need some paint, a pencil, something perhaps that a pencil or a pen that is waterproof, watercolours, whatever paints you've got. You could do this with pencils, crayons, anything you like, and a selection of objects that I will explain shortly. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is think about what we're actually going to draw, and I apologise if I'm a bit hoarse today making this video, but I've been stewarding over in Lyme Regis at an exhibition for the last 3 days, and I've talked to about 500 people. So get a glass of water and here we go. I'm going to think very carefully about my composition for this picture, because what this picture is about is trying to tell a little story, and that's what art is absolutely brilliant at doing. You can tell a story without using any words at all. So as you might see, this is my big box of shells for drawing that gets used in quite a lot of workshops. And the story I'm going to tell involves some things in here and some other things that I've got lying about. And what I need to do is I need to set this up so that I can think about the composition before I start drawing. So it's about making a picture that is probably going to be not dissimilar in size to this box. And I've got a big sheet of paper that I'm going to use for that. So do you know what I might do actually? I might just draw around the box as a starting point, because that will give me an outline of where I want to be. So what we'll do, you could use anything for this. You could do it round, you could have a plate, it doesn't really matter. You're just trying to give yourself a frame to work within. So that's going to be my frame, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to think about how things are going to fit in the frame for the story that I want to tell. So you might be wondering, as I'm sure you are now, what's in the box? Which is funny actually, because this whole project is called What's in the Bag, not What's in the Box, but we're going to look in the box. Oh, look at that. Now, for anyone who's a bit more far-flung than the local people who come along to Art Club, we live near a lot of beaches here, and some of them have the most amazing things on them. So there are shells and what have you, but there are also fossils. We have a lot of fossils. That's a fossil shell actually, and we have a lot of interesting bits of quartz, pottery, sea glass, all sorts of stuff. Now the story that I'm trying to tell today is that I have been on the beach and I've been exploring and I've been doing some digging about on the beach and messing about. So if you've seen any of my other videos or been to any of my classes, you'll know that I really love drawing pebbles. So I think I might put some pebbles out. We'll have a pebble and a fossil and a shell, because nothing says beach more than that, does it? Maybe we get a lot of ammonites here, so there's quite a nice one there. We'll have that one. I'll just get that out of the way. But it's not just about this. I've got other things going on. So I've in Lyme Regis, which is where I have been talking to all the people at the exhibition the last few days, I find a lot of bottles on the beach that have washed out of an old Victorian site. So I'm going to be using some of these today as well. And we've got a lovely old whistle that my neighbour gave me. I'm thinking it's probably a scout whistle from some time ago for those emergency cliff falls. We've got a lovely old compass as well. You can see I'm just putting them all over the paper, and the reason for that is because thinking about the layout is the most important thing. Oh, my digging trowel, obviously. Now, I can see already the trowel's not going to fit entirely, so what I'll probably do is put the trowel just off the side like that. You can still see it's a trowel. Maybe move it down a bit so you can see it's... Yeah, I think that'll work. And then I'm going to lay the other things out until I know roughly where I want things, and then I'll move them all off, and then we can give it a go. But the idea is that you're trying to tell this story, so let's think about how I can fit this stuff on the page. The whistle is a bit tricky because it doesn't want to lie how I want it to lie. There, that's better. That's better. Okay, the shell, I feel the shell could come in at the side Let's put the shell there. That's an old fish paste pot, and I use these all the time for ink, for using as ink wells. Little bottle there. I might put it down there. Got a fossil, pebble, another fossil. It doesn't matter if things go over the edge. So that's roughly where my things are going to be. And what story is this telling? This is telling the story that I've been down to the beach. I did have a map as well. And what you could do if you were feeling really crafty is you could... My next door neighbour gave me this, and she's managed to laminate it in some cunning way, so it's not... I can't use it to draw on or anything, but I could, if I wanted, maybe photocopy a bit of that to use as a base layer. That could be quite fun if you were using acrylics or paints that were opaque. I don't think I'm going to be able to get the map on, but it doesn't matter. We won't worry about that for now, just because there isn't enough space. Before I take these things off and move them up there, I'm just going to very roughly map where they are, because it will help me. And if anyone tells you you shouldn't draw around things as an artist, please feel free to laugh them out of the room, because I don't know a single artist who doesn't occasionally draw around stuff, and it's... Why would you not? It makes total sense to me. So we've got some string coming down here, we've got the whistle... Doesn't have to be madly accurate, because I'm using a pencil here, and we can always rub that out, remember? So let's just put in the shapes, and it will just help me get them all down. Now you could do one of these completely from your imagination. That can be quite fun. You know, it's a lovely thing to do with kids. What would you take with you on an expedition? Would you take a magnifying glass? Would you take a pair of Wellington boots, a handkerchief, maybe a set of plasters or a first aid kit? There's all sorts of things that you could think about that you might want to take out and about. Whoop, let's just move that over a bit so I can get that one in. And just drawing around them like this, you'll end up with quite a lot of sort of nice white space, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine. This is your picture, and you can do it any way you like. Right, so when I take these all off, I will have a record of roughly where they were, and that's going to make it a lot easier for me. So what I will do, I will pull this down a bit, so that's where I'm going to be drawing, and I'm going to put everything here in front of me. So if I've done that, it should be easier to just move them, ha ha ha, famous last words, to roughly where they were. But they don't have to be exactly right, because I've already drawn them, so I know where they are going. And indeed, if you've done it like this, you could just, when you want to draw them, pick up each individual object, draw it, put it down again. That would be fine too. That's about there. That's about there. Everything's covered in mud because I've pulled that trowel out of my greenhouse this morning. Okay, right, there we go. So can you see, I have got essentially a picture that is telling a story. I'll just make sure that the pencil lines are visible. They're really light. I haven't gone in heavy with those at all, because I want to make sure that I can rub them out if I want to. I was using quite a soft pencil. I use these very big thick pencils made by Faber-Castell. That's a 4B. That's a really big, I like something I can really get hold of, and I can make different marks with it. So I've got a big stash of these that I use for teaching, and also the leads don't break if you put them in your bag, which is really useful. Right, now I could go several ways now. The way you draw this is entirely up to you. You could draw everything beautifully realistically. If that sounds very worrying, you could draw them almost like cartoon objects. That's absolutely fine. You could draw outlines. You could do it almost as like a blind contour draw, which means you don't look too much down, but you kind of just glance down every so often. You could draw them really loosely. Your style is how you're going to draw that, but the idea of the objects will work however you do it. So being me, I'm going to draw the lines fairly loosely, and then I'm going to splosh loads of watercolour all over it, because that is basically how I like to roll. There will be quite a lot of going over the lines, as there often is when I'm doing stuff. Now I was debating between this, which is it's a black pencil. It's a very oily black colouring pencil. and I've got just a marker pen here, a very thin marker pen. Doesn't really matter what you use. You could use any sort of pencil. You could even use that. But what you want to make sure is that it's waterproof. So test it on something beforehand. Just put a little bit on something and just give it a good. So I'll do that now and show you. So what I would do is I just, whoops, there goes the tip. Make a little mark and get some water. If you're using a pen, obviously let it dry before you do this. Is it going to move? No, absolutely solid. So I know that when I throw the watercolour over the top, it will be absolutely fine. So what we're going to do now, I am going to use this because I love these pencils. Any black colouring pencil will be just as good. And I'm just going to start putting in some lines. Really, I've got the lines there already. Obviously, if I'm using a pencil over a pencil, you might think, oh, how's that going to rub out? Well, this pencil, because it's slightly oily, won't really rub out. And that's fine. It might a bit. Now, if you've got awkward things like circles, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to let things just kind of tangle off the edge of the paper a bit, off the edge of where my outline is, because I quite like the idea of that. Circles are quite difficult to draw. If you've got a circle to hand, that will help. That one? Bit big? No, actually not bit big. There is nothing wrong with drawing round things. It's actually physically impossible for a human being to draw a circle, I've decided. I don't know anyone who can do it. And I certainly wouldn't try it. Let's put in the north, west. This is going to take me a while, so what I might do is stop wittering and speed this bit up a little bit, because this is meant to be a kind of a relaxing exercise. You don't have to rush like mad to do all your bits, because if you've got them laid out and you've drawn around the outlines, even if somebody whipped the whole lot off the table, which happens quite a lot in my house when people want to make dinner or whatever, it doesn't matter because the stuff is already there. You've got your outlines to work from. So I'm going to go compass. It's got another little circle here. I will hand draw that one. Regret that later. There we go. And remember, you are just drawing in your style. You don't have to do this like I'm doing it at all. If you really like very, very accurate things, go ahead and do it like that. If you like it a bit looser, that's also fine. Story of my day out in Lyme, finding things on the beach. Again, I'm going to go slightly off the side. Okay, so we're just going to get the trowel in now, and the trowel is really muddy, so I'm going to add some of that mud in, because I think the mud is part of the story, isn't it? Here I've been on the beach. To be honest, if I was to try and draw the mud that's actually on the beach where I do this, where I go mudlarking, it is very muddy indeed. You can all be grateful that I didn't bring any of that back to the studio, because it really is astonishingly sticky. I usually wear gloves actually when I go and do this sort of thing. I'll just put in some, they're quite rough squiggles for mud, but you could do it with flicks. If you were doing something like this, say you were doing a gardening one, which I quite fancied, that almost ended up being what I was going to do. Gardening one, packet of seeds maybe. Loads of interesting things you could put on a gardening one. Tools. Right, so we've now got the basic idea, and this could take quite a while. I mean, this has taken me about 10 minutes maybe, but I draw quite fast. So please take your time with this. There is absolutely no rush. The lovely thing about using a pencil like this is that I don't now need to wait for this to dry, whereas if I'd used this I would be needing to wait a little while for it to dry. So happily I can rock on with the watercolour. So I've got some water, I've got some kitchen towel just to dab my brush on. I've got it's the brush I use all the time, so it's a size 12 I think, or might be a 14, can't see. I use these ones so often that actually the words have rubbed off, but they are just really, they're not expensive brushes. I don't use expensive brushes. These come in a set of, there's this one and a flat and a very small one, and they're about £20 for the 3 brushes. And when the point goes, which is the only thing you really need in a brush, it needs to have a good point. Once the point goes, I'll go and buy another one, because a brush without a point is literally pointless. You literally can't do anything with it. Now, colours, you can go absolutely mad on this and put any colours in you like. Looking at the palette of the things I've picked, I am seeing yellow ochres, I'm seeing pinks, I am seeing, I don't know if you can see that shell on there, I'll bring it back in a bit. Pinks, there's some rusty red oxide type colour on that. Greys, they're very flinty sort of colours, greys and silvers. So the colours I'm actually going to use to mix for this are going to be, let's have a look, we're going to have some light red. I'm going to mix a few things on the palette so I've got something to play with. Light red. This will give me some of the rusty tones, and I'll be getting that into the mud as well. I'm going to use, oh my goodness, that is not coming out, there we go. I'm going to use some cobalt, bit like ultramarine, so ultramarine is just as good, but I've got a bit of a thing about cobalt. It reminds me of summer, lovely blue. I am going to use a little bit of yellow ochre, which is over here. This is why I don't have posh brushes. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing, but I'm waking the colour up basically. I've squeezed watercolour paint into this palette, which gives me nice rich pigments, but I do need to kind of wake it up. So you can spray it to wake it up, but it's really important that you do with watercolours, otherwise it's really hard to get the colour going. Now, what am I going to do first? I'm going to put on one colour at a time, and I'm going to work my way around the picture. If you had items that were lots of different colours, for example, a picnic one, that could be really nice. You might find that actually there isn't much colour cohesion, but in which case just enjoy the fact you've got lots of lovely colours to play with. Let's have a little go. So where else? I'm looking around the picture thinking, what else can I... here we go. If I can put colour in more than one place at once, I'll do it. And the reason why is because then that will then have time to dry in a layer, and then I can come back and put another colour on. I might put a little undercoat on that one as well, because I think there'll be some of that. That will be a deeper brown, but there's no harm in having a bit of that. And get it on some of the muddy bits as well. Okay, so let that just have a think. I see some pink in that. Now, I could go for that one. Whoops, drop some water in there. I've got some quite fierce pinks in here. What's that? No, I don't think I like that one. Let's have a think. No, I'm going to go for this one, which looks like, that's so pink, it looks like I'm about to take it to a disco or something, but I'm going to mix it in with a little bit of light red, then you get quite a nice, and I'm going to allow that to blend in a bit with the ochre. If you've got a set of watercolour paints at home, you will find quite often that there is, well, is there often a pink? Sometimes there's a pink. If not, whatever red you've got, you can tone it down with the yellow ochre, and there's almost always a yellow ochre in there. Now, this is red around the edge of here, but I'm going to translate that as that same pink in the interest of making the whole thing look cohesive. And that can be a really nice thing to do, even if your items are not the same colour. Sometimes it's really nice to actually make them the same colour. So let's just get a little bit of that going on there. We've got the pink there. I'm going to put a little bit on this pebble as well, even though, as we say, it's not actually that pink. Right, okay. Now the greys, there's a lot of grey on this, and that's fine. To mix a nice grey, quite often a blue like this, and actually I'm just going to go straight in there, aren't I? Look, there we go. So that's a lovely pinky grey there. And if I add a little bit more blue, it will gradually move away from the pink. And now it's going into sort of flinty blue grey, which is exactly the colour I want for this. So I've got this little fossil here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, with watercolour, if you want to leave white highlights, you can either put them in first with a crayon, a white crayon, or even a birthday candle. I have a stash of birthday candles for this sort of thing, and you can put in little white lines where you're going to want them, or you can just try and remember to actually leave the white on the paper. It's probably the hardest thing to learn when you start doing watercolour, to remember that actually you have to leave those blanks. But once you get into the swing of it, I promise you it gets easier. There you go, put that on there. Now that's much lighter, so this fossil here, I'm going to wash my colours right out, get a really light grey going on, but maybe a little bit more bluey. Actually, I'm lying, it's not bluey, is it? It's browny. That will do. So I've mixed a little bit of the yellow in, which will just tip it towards a slightly browner colour. Getting to know your paints, that's the same colour. Getting to know your paints is really important. Once you know what they do when they mix together, so if you get a new paint or you've just bought a watercolour set, I really strongly advise mixing everything with everything until you've got essentially a set of a crib sheet of colour swatches, so that you know exactly what your paints do. Which other paints are they friends with? Are there other paints that they don't get on with? A little bit of shadow here. I've chosen quite difficult things to draw here. You do not have to do difficult things like this, and neither do you have to do them to this level of detail. You can be really just almost like outlines. It's just a really nice way of telling a story. Get a little bit more ochre, because now this layer is dried, I can start putting a few things on that add a little bit of sense of 3 dimensions to it. That bit's dry too. What else have we got? Okay, so we need to go back into this bottle. Yeah, I've chosen pretty much the most difficult items you could have. I've got something that's reflecting light, marvellous. I've got a glass bottle, nightmare. I've got a round object, so you've got to think about where the shadows are. Please choose easy things. Don't choose these things. It's fine. If you like a challenge, actually, this is quite a nice thing. If you can see all these things and you want to have a go at painting these, please do, and I'd love to see it if you did. Right, that's a little bit blue. So if you've put on a colour and you think, oh my goodness, I'm not sure about that, I'll tell you how to get it off. Make sure your brush is completely clean. dry it, and then you can just lift with watercolour. If it's still quite wet, you can lift it and dab it off. So you can see how easily that's coming off now. Lift, 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 lift. And then I'm left with the paler blue that I wanted. There we go. So I've got a little bit of that on. I'm just building up layers in colour, just slowly. I say slowly, I'm going quite fast, but you don't have to go this fast. And we've got, the trowel is tricky, so when you're looking, this is another tip, if you're looking at an object that is three-dimensional and it's got light bouncing all over it, what I recommend doing is squinting at it. Close your eyes right up and you'll be able to see where the light is actually hitting it. You'll be able to see which bits you need to then draw as dark and which bits you draw as light. It's much easier to see if you squint for some reason. The other thing that's quite a good thing to do is take a photo with your phone, because if you change that then to black and white, it's very obvious where those are again. So we're getting more three-dimensional now. I'm going to make a little bit more of that browny grey. So you can see how I've just mixed a little bit of the yellow into the, I had a puddle of pinky purple here. And if you've got red and blue and you add in yellow, you'll end up with brown. That's where they end up in the middle. There we go, we've got some more brown there. I'm going to put some in there because the bottom of that bottle is actually quite dark. A bit darker there. A little bit darker there. Watercolour loves to layer. So if you've got some nice translucent watercolours, this is a great thing to do. For a deeper colour, I'm mixing the pigments, that shocking pink again. I think it's rose pink. Whoa, that's exciting. And so I've only actually got, have I got 3 colours on the palette so far? Yeah, I've got cobalt, I've got what I suspect is permanent rose, but wouldn't like to swear to it. And I have got the yellow ochre. So I've got quite a red now. And the nice thing about that is if you keep your colour palette relatively limited and mix your colours from there, it will all hang together. You can see already that this is hanging together as a picture. That's still quite wet, but I'm going to allow that to be a bit more, a little bit of wet in wet where the paint is travelling about a little bit, but I think that's fine. This is quite loose. I might put a little, oh dear, no maybe not, that's not quite the right colour, is it? Let's remember about the lifting. Off it goes. But I quite like the purple on there, so I might just leave a bit in. And as you build layers, you can get deeper and darker. And you can see that the pencil is not lifting at all, even though I am sloshing quite a lot of water. And that's quite dark there, so I think I need to at this point to introduce another colour. Ooh, how exciting. Which one shall I do? I think what I'm going to do, I think this is the point where I need a deeper blue, because cobalt is brilliant, but I need something a bit heftier. So I am going to indigo. Indigo is great. Indigo is a brilliant colour. It's got real depth to it. Look at that, it's rich, it's beautiful, and it will make me some lovely dark greys, so that, oh, I'll be careful because I've got wet paint absolutely everywhere now. I can put in some little, because when you are doing something like this, you think about your light areas and your dark areas. If you're doing, you can do this with crayons, you can do this with anything pretty much, but I quite like to think about making sure that I've got a little bit of really, really light area, so bits that I've kept white, but equally bits that I've allowed to be very, very dark. And it just makes the picture so much more three-dimensional. Got it down that side. Where have we got? What have we got going on there? I need to put a key. So I'm just, you can see how I'm building it up on the trowel. one layer at a time, and keep stepping back and thinking, do I like it like that? Do I like this bit? Do I want to add a bit more? There we go. I'm not going to do that much more to it, but I think I need a deeper brown. So when I've got that, now I've got that indigo in play, I'm going to get a little bit of the ochre and the pink. So the ochre and the pink and the indigo will mix me. Okay, so I think we're nearly there. Fantastic. I might have got a bit carried away with my mud, but that's part of the fun, isn't it? Okie dokie. There we go. Just realised actually that needs a bit more of an outline around it. So what we've got here is a little story. What is in the bag? I'm going fossiling. These are all the things that I would be using to go fossiling, and obviously I've been fossiling because I found things and there's mud everywhere. So this is the project for this month, and you can make whatever you like of this. Just try something new, give it a go, and if you do anything, I'd love to see what you get up to. Okay, so that's all from Art Club this month, and I hope you've enjoyed making your picture and maybe got a toothbrush out, did a bit of splattering as I've done here. I would really like to see what you get up to, so do send me a picture. I can be found on Facebook, Anna Brewster Art. I can be found on Instagram, I'm Sidmouth Skies on there, or just pop to my website and drop me a message. Thanks ever so much for joining in. See you in June. Bye.